Hi. This series is how to be a better field target shooter in 15 minutes. And what I'm doing is talking to different field target shooters and getting some advice and tips on how you can become a better field target shooter. And tonight I'm going to be talking to Bill Rabbitt about bracketing. Now, you may have never even heard of bracketing, but bracketing is another resource you can use when you're ranging your target to determine what the distance is to that target. So Bill's a great guy. He's an engineer and has an engineer mind, and I really like that. And he's a great competitor and a great shooter. So let's talk to Bill now about bracketing. Hello again, Bill. How you doing?
Hey, great, Philip.
Good.
Good evening.
Yeah. So I want to talk to you about bracketing. Now, I've only started using bracketing seriously probably the last year and a half. But we was at nationals and, I thought I was all slick with my bracketing notes. And then I saw your bracketing notes and I was like, oh, this is a man who knows his bracketing. I'm glad I'm talking to you about bracketing. I believe in Europe, they use bracketing an awful lot for ranging. But I think their rules are a little different than ours. And
they can't adjust parallax. Is that right?
Yeah, I think that's right. So bracketing is really big over there. But bracketing, first of all, explain to us what in the world is bracketing.
All right. So bracketing, so as an object gets further away from you, because the visual angle gets smaller, an object looks smaller. So you're using the physics of that to use it as like a ruler in your scope. You're using your reticle as a ruler to kind of gauge how far an object is away from you.
Right. So, and that comes in handy, especially for, again, we're 100 field target shooters and we're limited to 16 power scopes. So it is more difficult for us to be able to range accurately at the far distances. So what you're saying is bracketing is something you can use to measure, the mills of your scope and measure the base of a target or a 2x6 on, or the center block or whatever the target is on to measure and you have to do your homework ahead of time to know
Correct.
what that measurement is at that distance, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Same thing like parallax. It requires a little bit of homework. It's setting objects out there and seeing where it falls, how many MOA hashes each object takes up.
Yeah. So on your scope, and I should have asked you this ahead of time. Are you using a mil dot scope or what kind of reticle are you using?
It is an MOA reticle.
MOA. Okay.
Yep.
And you could use bracketing with any reticle, I suppose.
Yeah. Anything. Yep.
Yeah.
It's just your marks are going to be different than my marks, depending if it's which division it is. So right. I guess when you're selecting a scope for field target, that's another thing to consider is not only all the other features, but the reticle. And if you have there's some scopes like a hawk scope will have really fine defining features at the very edge. Mm-hmm. I don't like kind of using the edge of the scope. This Night Force has got some pretty small defining marks right in the reticle, so that helps. That's where the glass is clearest. That's where you're not going to be straining your eye or have light issues. It's right in the middle.
So whenever you're using bracketing, are you using bracketing to just confirm a distance, or are you using bracketing at only your furthest distances or all your ranges? When do you use bracketing?
So, and just like you, I just started really seriously using it this year. I dabbled in it a little bit last year, but I did it wrong. And I'll tell you later why I did it wrong, how I did it wrong. But this year, I started doing it. And I've only done from 40 to 55. Anything closer, it's pretty good. I mean, you're in anything closer than 40, you're within your zero anyway. So if you're a couple of yards off, you're still good. And then anything closer than your 25, you can range pretty accurately. So I don't bother there. Mm-hmm. But this year, I really relied on bracketing. If I could see an object that I knew the distance of and it wasn't askew to me, I relied on that over my eye. I was able to hold it close. Yep. I relied on that more this year than my parallax number.
Interesting. Very interesting. Okay. So, and you're saying so beyond 40.
40.
Okay.
Yep. And the reason why I bring in 40, I showed someone my bracketing card and they're like, "Oh, you go all the way down to 40?" And it was because nationals, when you beat me a couple years ago,
Right.
there was some small 42, 45-yard targets where if you didn't have your ranging correct, you were missing, you were dinking, you were missing. So it is important to have an accurate yardage at those spots because people will put out those smaller kills. They're able to put them out there. So
Yeah. Yeah. There's been many targets that I've missed, and it's right like you're saying, right around 42, 43. It's something about that range. It's just far enough, and they can make the holes just small enough where if you're off, you'll get bit. Yeah.
yep. I think we're giving people who set up courses for hunter shooters some inside info. They're like, "Oh man, we're gonna litter courses with
So
small kills."
whenever you're using bracketing, what are you looking at to bracket? Is it the base of the target? Is it the center block? Is it the 2x4? Is it the 4x6? Is it all those things? What are you bracketing?
Yeah, it's all of those. So where I messed up last year was like sometimes I can't see the base that it's mounted to. There's all these different target manufacturers out there. I don't know what the width of base. I'm gonna go by the kill, and that was my problem. I thought I'm gonna bracket from 45 to 55, thinking that all right, this is a full size kill,
Right.
and it should be about the same. And I'll try bracketing on that. Well, one, it's a black hole. Two, it's small. Yeah. Where my revelation came this year was the bigger the object you can bracket, the better, the more accurate that this process is.
Yep.
So at least around us, the things that targets are mounted on are going to be a cinder block or a piece of lumber, piece of defined lumber. So what I did setting up, I did a cinder block at every yard between 40 and 55. I took a cinder block, I set a chunk of 2x8 on it, then a 2x6, and then a 2x4. Oh, wow. And I would look through at each one and see at which yard it was perfect, like where one of my mill marks, and that's why you see on, and you're gonna put a copy of this like here somewhere so people can see it. But some yardages don't have a bracket number. I only marked exactly when things were perfect, where it lined up right, so that I wasn't wishy-washy. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean, there's some people. So Scott Hall, Justin Roberts. There's been these rumors, these guys with these notebooks where they'll be like, "Oh, the Home Depot clamp is 4.5 inches. If I range it here, or the problem with target bases is that there's so many now. I asked Tyler, how many different targets are there? I mean, there's so many different manufacturers. We make our own custom ones, so that base could vary a little bit in width. So I don't rely on that at all.
Okay. Like a Gammo, I think a Gammo base is like 7 inches, and then I've been to matches, and I swear whoever set up the course, it's a Gammo target. I can tell it is, but they've chopped off the ends of the base just to mess me up,
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, some of those guys, it's rumored around the courses, like they had, there's a maple next to it. Well, it looks like about 5 years old. Given the growth and how much rain we've got, that tree is going to be 7.25 inches in diameter. Yeah. It's crazy. But yeah, I just stick with building material. And the only time you can get messed up is if it's a skew. If the base is a little bit off. The one nice thing with cinder blocks is if you can see the entire height of the block, then you can use the height as a gauge because it's 8x8 by 16. So if it's a little bit at an angle, if you can see top to bottom, you can still use it.
Yeah. But and so whenever you're using bracketing, and you can tell a difference at 55 yard what a 2x4 and a 2x6 looks like.
Correct. And so that's somewhere where the parallax comes in. Where if I go through and I'm like, I think that's a 2x6. Once I range it and I go, okay, it's around 50 yards. If the markings aren't even close, I mean, the difference between a 2x8, 2x6, 2x4 at 52 yards, one is 13.5 MOA. The 2x6 is 10.5, and the 2x4 is 6.5. So there's a big enough difference there. We'd be like, oh no, it's not a 2x6, it's a 2x4.
Gotcha.
So you can kind of vary that.
Yeah, I was trying to use bracketing on the kill zone like you, and at the closer targets, you can do it, but whenever it gets to 50 and 55, it's pretty small, and it's hard for you to physically stay still enough to measure. Yeah.
Yep.
But if I have a center block out there, I'm like, oh yeah, thank you, a center block.
Thank you.
It's nice and big.
Oh yeah. Yep.
Good
For
stuff.
sure.
All right. Now, well, one last question is bracketing foolproof? Do you think it's foolproof?
So I would say, since we're giving this information out, like, are people going to start chopping 2x8s into 2x6 or 2x7s? Like adjusting them so that it's messing people up. Cinder blocks are pretty reliable, but I would say, if given the normal building materials out there, the only thing that I think that can get you is at an angle. And I pushed it. Like, there were some cinder blocks that were turned fairly far, and I still use those numbers, and I still hit the target. So you can do the math and the cosine to see when it starts really affecting that. It's changing that value. But no, I had really good luck with it this year. And again, it's finding those larger objects to range.
I think the data is the data, and if you've done your homework, it's going to work. The only problem I would see would be me translating my notes and understanding it, and then like not getting mixed up in my notes. And the other thing would be, you got to be mindful of your time. Because you've only got 5 minutes, and if you're over here looking through your notebook to see what the bracket from Home Depot, the measurement is, you gotta be careful.
Yeah, that's another thing that over the years in a field target match, I'll shoot the nearest target as quickly as possible. Like, I'll range it, I'll try to tap, and then for the further one, that gives me some more time to either wait for wind or to use my ranging and backing to verify my distance. So
good tip.
Sorry about the dog barking.
Oh, that's okay. That's okay. We all got them. Any last comments on bracketing?
Let me see my notes. I think that's it.
Yeah,
it's pretty concise. I would say everyone should try it, especially older people that complain about not being able to really range well because of their eyesight and things. I would suggest going to bracketing, especially for the further distances.
Well, too, if you can't afford a high end scope, bracketing would be a great way to do some accurate ranging on a budget. So, I would think that would work. So, all right, good stuff.
Yeah.
I appreciate. I'm glad I'm talking to an engineer, because you have an engineer mind, and you're all about the measurements, and you're understanding all that. So
yeah. Likewise.
I appreciate you sharing this information with us, and a lot of tips here. That we're sharing a lot of secrets, but that's all right.
So, well, hopefully a lot of people learn, and it becomes more enjoyable for people that feel that get a little bit frustrated and just needs a tip here or there to make them shoot a little bit better and start enjoying the sport again. So
yeah, and it all comes down to doing your homework ahead of time. All right. Well, thanks a lot, Bill. I appreciate the time tonight.
Yeah. Well, great talking to you, Phil.
All right, you too. Thanks.
Take care.